family consisted of mother and father and an older sister named Susie. And my father was a physician, and we lived in an apartment house overlooking a park where we always played. We were Jewish, I would say secular Jews. We were not particularly religious. And looking back on it, I guess we were pretty well off. I mean, we had a cook and a maid and somebody that came did the laundry and somebody else that ironed. So life was good. My father worked we had both private patients and also for something called the Workers' Insurance, so sort of like socialized medicine. So he had a lot of patients from the area. Okay. Okay, so this took place in March 1938. Now you can figure out how old I am. Okay, so there was supposed to be a referendum to see whether Austria wanted to join Germany. And my father was a social democrat, and I mean, he thought that anything was better than the Nazi thing, so he called people, told them to go and vote. But just the day before, the referendum was canceled. Okay, so now we're talking about like March 13th. We were in a dance recital, my sister and I. And I still have the costume because I was a clown, you see. I was a clown. My sister was the prince, of course. Yeah, and my kids have one is for Halloween. So we took the streetcar and we got to the hall. And there were hardly anybody there, just a few parents. And on the way back, we noticed the men had turned, the lapels of the coats and showed the swastika. And I mean, I didn't know what the swastika was, but my mother did. She was pretty worried. And then there were planes overhead. And that evening, Schuschnigg, who was the chancellor, gave a speech, and he said that in order to avoid bloodshed, he's going to allow the German army to come in. Okay? So that day, everything changed very suddenly, because in Germany, between 1933 and 38, the laws against the Jews were implemented gradually. But in Vienna, Austria, everything was very fast, because they knew how to do it. So I was going to tell you that our apartment house had a balcony around it. We were on the third floor. Yeah. And it was a park, and we always played. But we're not allowed to play in the park, okay? Jews were not allowed to sit on the benches. And I think the hardest part for a child, and I guess it would be for you too, if the friends that you played with, that were not Jewish, all of a sudden turned their backs to you because parents were afraid to have them off. I think that was hard. And then we couldn't go to school. Well, I didn't mind that so much at first, but it got boring after a while. We were supposed to go to a special school for the Jewish children, and I think it went there just one day. I remember it very much. It was in a basement, and like 50 kids, and there was a male teacher. And you smell the gas? I don't know. I didn't go anymore. So, okay. So I'm just looking at this so I don't forget what to tell you. So one day we went to visit my uncle in another part of the city, and our cook, Frau Lisi, called on the phone and said, don't come home now, because do you know what the SS is? Yes? Okay. Because the SS is downstairs in your apartment house. And I forgot to tell you, downstairs on the first floor was a Jewish preschool. that I guess I had attended. The SS was there and they were plundering it. They were throwing all the furniture and everything out, and they made their headquarters there. So there we were, up there, and there was sort of a garden area attached to it, and there was these long tables where then the guys would be drinking beer and singing. It's, okay, so now I'm going to tell you about my doll, Lily. This is Lily. She came with me. She had a facelift though, because she had lost her eyes. Okay, so I'm playing on the balcony, with Lily, and I had her all wrapped up in blankets. Somehow I dropped the doll into where the SS was sitting at the tables. And my mother said, if you're very courteous, very polite, you can go down and get your doll. So my heart was pounding. I went, courtesy, yes. And I got the doll back. And actually, the doll has been sort of instrumental. And I gave this talk one time, and this woman heard it, and she's written a book about the doll and me coming from Vienna. It's called My Two Cities. I'll pass it around later. It's kind of cute. Okay. The doorbell rang, and this big, I'm not tall now, but I was small. Big SS man came in, opened the door and ran into his son. And he put his hat on the table next to the door. It had the crossbones, of the skull, and I was so scared. And the reason he came in was to hang a banner from our balcony down to where their headquarters was. So it has like two lightning bolts on it. Maybe you've seen it. After that, we never played on the balcony anymore. One day, my father was called to the police, and SS man was walking with him, and when he came out of the house, he bumped into our mailman, who also was a social democrat, and we knew him. And he said, "Dr. Ehrkeit, where are you going?" And he said, "Well, I've been called to the police." So he said, "I will go with you." And pretty soon, they were walking along, and pretty soon, my father's patients, the grocer, the butcher, the fruit guy, they all said, "Where are you going?" And they came with my father to the police. And I think it must have been early on, maybe in April, because he was let go. And I think that's a good example of people sticking their necks out. They were not Jewish. They were Aryan. They stuck their necks out to help my father. And another thing that helped, that my father was a very beloved doctor in the neighborhood, because, after the referendum that I was talking about, the Austrian symbol had been painted in oil on some of the sidewalks. And they got the Jewish women to kneel down and scrub those off with, with water and toothbrush, My mother said, I'm never going out with my apron on. I'm not going to kneel down with my nice dress. But she was never called because she was the doctor's wife, So there were searchlights at night, and we had to have the windows blacked out. Okay, so then there were house searches, and they were looking basically for literature. And of course, my father, a little bit on the left, he was not a communist, he was a social democrat, but he had journals called Die Fackel, which means the torch, and it had a lot of those journals. And we had a big kind of tile stove in our living room. Started burning burning books, books written by Jews, and there was a lot. And pretty soon, the neighbor from upstairs came down and said, my stove is heating up. Can I use your oven, your stove, or whatever it's called, to burn my books? And there was, my grandmother lived around the corner, but apparently she did have a house church, and she got so nervous. I mean, she didn't have anything, but she came to live with us then, and so she lived with us. My father's car, he had this old Tucker, old check car, was confiscated. It was put into an Aryan garage, but he still had to pay the gas and the oil and the maintenance, but he couldn't use it. And you know, at that time, doctors did house calls, not like now. And so he couldn't do the house calls without a car. And then he wasn't allowed to practice medicine anymore. I think first the workers' insurance was canceled, and then his private practice. So there was no way to earn money. We also had not a maid, a nanny. Named Minna. But you see, she was under 35 years old, and so she had to leave because I guess they were afraid that, I don't know, they were going to be raped or something, you know, women under.
Didn't know what their ratio was.
Yeah. So, I was telling you that we weren't very religious, but that spring my father decided to do a Seder, a Passover. You all know what that is, right? So the windows were blacked out, of course. All weren't supposed to do that. I don't know how he did it because he didn't know Hebrew. But at the end of the service, you know, I believe they said next year in Jerusalem, and he said next year in America. So I remember that. So now probably you let me just see if I forgot anything here. You may be wondering how it got out. You see, we were among the very fortunate people that got out. And I thank my father because he was very foresighted. He went to the consulate immediately, to the American consulate, and something strange happened. My father was born in Trieste. Do anybody know where that is? It's in Italy. You know how the boot, you don't have a blackboard, the boot of Italy, and it's right on the top. Before World War I, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, okay? So my father was Austrian. But when he went to the consulate, the clerk asked, where were you born? He said, in Trieste. And they put us down as Italian. So we were in the Italian quota. There was a quota number, only a certain number of people could immigrate, okay? So the Italian quota was not full because there were not that many Jews in Italy. Had we been in the Austrian-German quota, I wouldn't be here to talk to you. So I always ask, do you think the clerk did it on purpose to save us or out of ignorance? You know, you can think about that. So in order to get out, though, wasn't that easy. You had to get an affidavit. That meant someone in this country had to vouch for you that you wouldn't be a burden to the state. And my father did have a colleague from medical school who lived in Boston, and he sent us an affidavit, so that was good. I told you about the quota number. Yes, if you were, okay, you had to give, you had to pay an escape tax, which was a third of all your assets. And you also have, I'm not sure exactly how much money you had to leave back. I mean, my father didn't talk about the money, but You had to have an entry visa and an exit visa. You had to have a ship ticket. You had a criminal check, military record. My father had been in the Austrian Army in World War I. And he had good record. So we had an uncle Paul, who lived in Belgium. As my father said, he was much more clever about business than my father. And he took care, I think what happened was that there were some barns in Trieste still. And somehow they didn't find out about that. Those went to my Uncle Paul, who saved that money. So when we came to America, we were not totally penniless. I mean, that was a lot. Okay, we weren't allowed to tell anybody that we were leaving. One thing was missing. Something had gotten in the bureaucracy. One of the visas, I think the entry visa had got missing. But my father said, we have to get out. We have to get out now because it's getting worse. And we went to Italy. Italy was fascist. It was under Mussolini. It was better than Austria. And my father had a little bit of money there. We weren't supposed to tell anyone that we were leaving. And my sister, who was 12, had a little boyfriend named Felix. And she asked my mother, oh, could I just say goodbye to Felix? And my mother said, yes, you just told Felix. And he was Czech. So I think he went back to Prague. And I'm sure he didn't survive. But, you know, my sister looked for him the rest of her life. She looked, you know, it was very sad. We had 13 suitcases. See, the green stripe was on so that we could find the suitcases. I still have this thing. Oh, I didn't show you this. Has anybody been in Austria? Any of you? Well, you know where Dirndl, right? This was my little Dirndl. Oh, so it has an apron. Okay. So we went to Italy. We had to leave everything behind. I mean, not everything. We had clothing, we had some books, but toys, and I think just had Lily and some, little animals that I played with. I remember we took the taxi to the train station, and it was raining, and I was 8 years old, and I said, when I'm twice as old as I'm now, I'm going to love my new city as much as I love Vienna. So in this little book, you know, it says, when I'm 16, yes. My father, well, we didn't have all the documents to go over the border. I think my father bribed the customs or something because there was some exchange of money at the border. And have any of you been in Italy? Yes. So we went to Sorrento on the Bay of Naples, and because my father had some money there, and he didn't want to leave anything to the fascists. Nothing to the fascists. We stayed in this super luxurious hotel, right, on the top of the cliffs. And a few years back, I went back on a trip to that hotel. It cost me more than the whole trip. But I just wanted to go back there, and it was the same, you know. Okay. We were there for 6 weeks, and my father did a little bit of homeschooling, you know. We looked at the stars and learned the constellations and stuff. And my grandmother was with us, and Mount Vesuvius was still spouting fire. So I was too scared to go to Pompeii, but my sister and my grandmother went. So one day my father was summoned to the police again, and I don't know, my sister and I had to go by, tried to look in the window, and I don't know what happened. Maybe we didn't come back. So eventually, and he used to take the ferry across the bay to the consulate, which was in Naples, to see whether our visa had come through. So finally it came through, and we took the train through France to Le Havre, and that's where we shipped in to the SS Washington. We stopped in Ireland, I think, and then at that point they hoisted the American flag, and everybody said, no, we're free. So it was very stormy on the Atlantic. Everybody was seasick. I actually stayed in the cabin with my little animals. When we came to New York, we took the train to Boston, and we looked out of the window, and all these houses had collapsed, and trees were down and everything. And my father, the only one that spoke a little bit of English was my sister. So he said, Susie, go and ask the conductor what happened. And she came back and she said, hurricane. But we didn't know what a hurricane was. It was a famous hurricane of 1938 that came all the way up to Maine. And was very, very destructive. And at that time they didn't predict anything. So we said, what kind of a country are we coming to? Do you want me to tell you a little bit about the adjustment here?
Yeah.
No, okay. So, hold on. I should have said to David. And so the first, okay. So we came to Boston. We didn't know any English. We went for a walk. I think it was in Cleveland Circle. We see all these guys fighting, falling over each other. It was American football. But we didn't know what American football was, because everybody played soccer. Right? My parents looked for an apartment, for a furnished apartment. I think we stayed in some kind of a rooming house, and it was very, very depressing. I think it's the first time I really felt homeless. As a little child, I would put the chairs around in a circle and sit in the middle of the chairs and play and pretend that I had a house. But they did find a furnished apartment in Brighton. And a few days later, my mother took me to the Harriet A. Baldwin School, public school, and I had 2 years of school in Vienna. I came here without any English, and the teachers had no concept at all of a child that didn't speak the language. There was nothing like English as a second language. So they just spoke louder. And they put me in the 4th grade, and I was never in the 3rd. So when I graduated high school, I was barely 17. Whatever, I guess I didn't miss that much, except I'm not good in math, so I must have missed something in the 3rd grade. I don't know. So I didn't know any English, and the only thing I knew to say was, I understand. And I thought it meant I don't understand. So the kids would say, oh, she understands, blah, 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 blah. So for 6 weeks after that, I closed my mouth. I just listened. And after 6 weeks, I spoke English. And I think it's really important for children to learn a foreign language much younger. High school is too late. I think middle school is too late. I think we should do it in grammar school. It's good to be bilingual. So we only spoke German at home, at my house. So I did retain the German. Oh, I forgot to tell you something important. When the ship came to New York and we saw the statue of Ludwig, everybody ran on to that side of the deck, and we're hugging. So, let me see, what else? I think that probably you have some questions about, mostly about what happened here after 10 years. Because I do want to tell you about, the adjustment. Industry. Are any of you guys from another country? You are, where are you from?
I'm from Colombia.
Pardon?
Colombia?
Colombia.
Yeah.
So did you speak English or?
I learned English in primary school. Yeah, my school was bilingual. So that's where I learned
You
English.
still speak Spanish?
Yeah, I speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Spanish is my first language.
It's really nice to have two languages. I spent a year in Italy, so I had an Italian boyfriend who speaks Italian. It's good. Okay, so do you guys have any questions? I can keep talking. And could you speak Latin, helping because
Sure,
I'm really
yeah.
a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So you said you didn't have a conception of like the swastika obviously at 8 years old. Did you when did you understand that your family had to move out because they were being persecuted from where they were originally to Italy and then to the US?
Something about this.
So, you said that when you were 8, you didn't really understand the swastika. At what point did you understand the significance of that your
That's a
family was
good
a dangerous
question.
person?
I think my parents are very protective. And I don't think I really, we certainly didn't know anything about concentration at 8 years, 8 and a half. That's 8 and a half. It's interesting. Have any of you seen the musical Cabaret? Yeah. I saw it, and then the guy puts on the swastika. That hit me very much. I think it's a good question. When I was in college already, I think it must have been like 1948. Some of the DP boats came to Boston. DPs are British displaced persons who had survived the camps, and all of the ships landed in Boston. And my mother and I went to the port to help at the customs to translate. And I think that's when it really hit me. And I know I was crying all night, and
Did you lose family?
well, yes, everybody from Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
Because my father told my grandmother's family, all from Czechoslovakia. And my father said, "You need to get out." And they said, "Oh no, Hitler will never come to Czechoslovakia." So, it's interesting. I have a letter at home. I got letters from my grandmother's sister. And she was in Brno, I don't know how to pronounce it. But no, there's no vowel.
Oh, yeah.
Brno, in Czechoslovakia. And she wrote to a friend whom I guess she thought knew more about it, because she was about to be deported. And she said, can I bring a warm coat? Can I bring a good dress as well as my house dress when I'm deported? And can my grandson bring he had a mouth harmonica to play? They had no idea. So all my grandmother's family passed away, except one cousin named Katie, who survived, and I have her. And my father was going to adopt her, after she got out. But there's another story about Katie. She got married very young because she had a boyfriend and they wanted to be together. So her young husband died, and when she found that out when she got out. And then my father went to adopt her, but it took a long time. And then 2 years later, she wrote a little sheepishly that she had met a widower who had lost his wife and they were getting married. And so they went to Australia. They never told their daughter that they were Jewish. She was baptized. She was brought up. She asked for the number. I said, oh, you know, we couldn't forget. We were afraid to forget the telephone. Eva, the daughter, came one time to see us because we were the only family. Yeah. You know, there were, well, there must have other questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wonder, like, how do you feel at that time when you were young and you live in Vienna and also like in Italy? How do you feel like you live in like a fear, or is it like in your normal day? Can you just like go out to buy groceries? Is your life kind of same as what you spend here in Boston? Just like you didn't live in fear, or is it just normally, or?
Did you mean did I live in fear then?
Yeah.
I'm living a little bit in fear now. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to talk politics, but it's too much like what happened. Yeah. You know, I think it's just part of my parents were so protective that we never really learned about. I was impressed that my grandmother's sister, you know, was in Auschwitz, but they never told us. No. I brought another book. So my sister wrote this book after we came here. My father's name was Otto. He got all these letters from family, not just family, friends. Dear Otto, help us to escape. And see, we didn't appreciate that because we were kids and we were busy with school. He had to learn English. He had to pass his medical board so that he could practice again. At the same time, he was trying to help people to get out. He didn't have the money to send the affidavit, but he was instrumental in getting 17 families out. And my sister Susie wrote this book called Dear Otto, and she is basically writing about just about a few families, you know, how difficult it was, and not everybody got out, but my father tried. But I don't know, have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's really nice, and it's good. Good book. So, so my father learned English and, you know, passed the medical boards and started to practice medicine here, but most of his patients were refugees, so he didn't make much money. He eventually worked for the VA and had a regular salary. Yeah. I think you know, you asked me what was frightening at the time. I think it was sad to leave my friends and how easy to cook. I went back to Vienna. The first time I went back after college, I spent a year in Italy. And that year I went back to Vienna, and it was very, very depressing. It was all bombed out, you know, and it was still in 4 zones, American, British, Russian, and French. Yeah. And Charlize, a cook, lived in the Russian zone, and we're not supposed to go there with an American passport, but I did anyway, you know. But I had a psychosomatic stomachache the whole time I was there. Very bad. But I've been back to Vienna many times. And this last time I went just before, I was teaching at Boston College. You're a BU, I should say. I was teaching at Boston College. And the last time I went to Vienna was with the BC Chorale, just before the pandemic. And it was a lot of fun. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, it was a lot of fun, but I still feel a little weird. Yeah. So, do you have any other questions? Yeah.
Is there any like Austrian Jewish culture that you still hold on to and like practice even though you've lived in Boston for like?
Oh, I still make Gurgelhof. Do you know what that is? Do you speak German?
My dad's Austrian. Like
Yeah. I was teaching German at BC. And also I was teaching in the music department at Howard. Yeah, life goes on. We all have to vote. I'm now taking, I audit classes at BC now because I'm retired. And I'm taking one on women in film. And the professor, you know, Susan McCulture. Yeah.
John's wife.
John's wife.
Yeah, I know them both well. Yeah.
She's telling all the students, get involved.
He's going to come to this class later. I know a few people.
Yes, yes, of course. Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for listening. You're all great.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, you've spoken to students in the United States. Have you ever spoken to students in Austria?
No, you know, this little book, I translated it in German,
Yeah.
which was really hard because the rhyming,
Mm-hmm.
but I did it, and I thought, well, the ideal thing would be for, you know, to do this here in Austria.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any connection, I didn't know how to do it.
Maybe we can arrange, I can arrange a Zoom with them. Because I know the director of the Jewish Museum and I play concerts in Vienna, so I have contacts there. Yeah.
Talking
Yeah.
to go my days, look.
Yeah.
Okay, well, check my German.
Yeah.
Double checked it, you know,
Yeah.
and, yeah, it's good.
So you speak Hochdeutsch.
It's Wienerisches Deutsch.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the Viennese, the Austrian accent is a little different from the High German.
Mm.
Maybe I could say like British is from American.
Mm.
It's a little softer.
Yeah. Mm.
I like it.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
Any other questions?
I think this class is so
Oh,
great.
we have one more.
Yes, and speak about, Professor Ludwig will translate for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like, making friends in America when there was a language barrier?
Oh, when I first came.
Yeah.
I think the children were pretty nice to me, you know, I mean, it was kind of an oddity. Actually, there was one other girl in the fourth grade who had come, I think from Germany. I remember her name was Ellen, and I think she was jealous that I had come, she was very mean. Yeah, but all the other children were nice. Yeah, I made friends, you know. And lost contact with them. I have to tell you one other little story, okay? So when we moved into the furnished apartment in Brighton, there was a Viennese family that just moved out. And it just so happened they had been the patients of my father's. And they had two sons, exactly the same ages as my sister and I. So we became friends, and every Saturday we went to the movies in Brighton at the Egyptian Theatre. And we partly learned English that way. I think my mother thought it was children's movies, but it wasn't, you know. Okay, so these two boys were very bright. One of them, became a physicist, got his PhD when he was 21. The other one, okay, a few years ago I was looking at TV, and the other one, Martin, got a Nobel Prize in chemistry.
Oh, yeah?
So I wrote to him, it was at Harvard, and congratulated him. I said, do you remember? He said, yes. He's right. He said, I'm writing an autobiography. What number Washington Street did we live on? So I remembered it, I sent it to him. I got the autobiography about a year and a half ago, hardcover. And near the beginning, he says, that Vienna, and they had two friends, the girls that they went to the movies with, and he said, I had a crush on the younger one, but she only had eyes for my older brother. And that's absolutely true. Okay, so Martin Cox, this is his name, and he unfortunately he just died. Recently, there was a lot about him in the Globe. I mean, you know, the autobiography, I didn't understand some of it with all the chemical stuff, but anyway.
Sounds like really similar to my question, but did you ever hear that people would discriminate you against you here in America?
I have not personally. I don't know what's going to happen. I think there was a quota number of Harvard, wasn't there, on how many Jews?
Oh, for decades, yeah. In the law school, the med
Yeah.
school,
I mean, I did go
undergrad.
Oh, it was called Radcliffe, but all the classes were Harvard. Except Jim. So,
Well, thank you so much.
yeah, I mean, this was different from music, and you have some wonderful music. And this
Well,
is
but
a
I
great
did-
class.
Oh, thank you.
You should come to this class.
You should listen to her. No, I think what is wonderful about you speaking about this, I can tell you facts. I can give you background of things, but to hear a perspective from somebody who lived in this period,
Yeah, they're not very
it's
many
so
people.
far more enriching. And to see that you brought these items from your childhood.
Well, I have talked to a lot of schools. I really like talking to, I mean, I like talking to you too, but I like talking to 8th and 9th grade.
Mm.
I think those, you know, that's an age that really don't know anything. Yeah.
Well, it's, you know, for.
I talked to John McCulloch's class.
Oh, yeah, that's right, you told
Yeah,
me about
because
that.
he teaches a class, film, Holocaust film.
Well, I did a film with him on the DP camp and the orchestra, which we're gonna watch near the end. But this is a man who's a filmmaker, and in fact, he called me up one day. He said, can I just have, I need to film you for like 10 minutes. I need to put it in this documentary. And I said, well, and I was going the next day to Africa. I was climbing Kilimanjaro. And I said, I gotta go. And he says, I just need it now. I gotta get this out, right? So I go, and it ends up being 6 hours later. And it's about this orchestra that played they came out of the camps, and they were the DP camp. And then one of the main characters who lived through this was a man I grew up with. And he and my father were the only Yiddish speakers in the Philadelphia Orchestra. So I knew him, and then my brother, when this man left the orchestra, my brother took his position. So before I knew it, I ended up doing the film score for it and playing on it, but we got involved on this DP thing. So we're gonna see, and of all things, Leonard Bernstein in 1948 went over and performed with them. And they were performing, here are people who had been in concentration camps. They were now performing not only for fellow former prisoners, they were performing for Germans. They were going around Germany performing concerts. And it's an amazing story. But I'm so glad that you're sharing this because, you know, to think about coming over and to make that transition. And it's a lesson also that, you know, people that come over, they add to this country. That they're, you know, they're not to be demonized. You know, it's so, you know, I'm not trying to take a political stand right now, but you put a face on a story as opposed to a concept. Right?
Well, I was talking, one of my daughters-in-law is an English teacher in Santa Rosa in California, and her class is mostly Hispanic and Asian, you know, and immigrants. Right?
Yeah.
And that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, almost all of us, we come from
We're
the
all
South.
immigrants.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Although part of my family is American Indian.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a quarter Cherokee.
Oh, that's
I'm
wonderful.
not fully related. Yeah, I don't look it, do I?
Yeah.
No, yeah. Didn't expect that. That's next year's class. But thank you so much. Any more questions or no? We're good? Yeah. Thank you. Can I take a picture of you with the class?
What's that?
Can I take a picture of you sit there with the class? And I'll send it to you guys.
Somebody's last.
That costs extra. So the other thing, before you guys go, remember, first of all, let me get everybody in. Come closer. Okay. Great, thank you. So remember, next week, data presentations, right? You've now had a sampling between Hindemith and Schulhoff, right? You know it's all over the map. Make sure you have your presentation, which can be multimedia, whatever. We'll do it in this room in case somebody wants to use a piano, all right? And then I want you to be prepared that you can explain process and where are you having a message down the line. First, we're gonna go around the class and see if anybody picks up on any cues on it, did it have any resonance, etc. Then we'll get to that next part. So you should figure out that your sentiment, each of you should have somewhere around 4 or 5 minutes. We'll get through that, all right? Shouldn't be pressure, should be fun, all right? But it's important because here we are, we're spending semester looking at artists who were creating and performing, right? I bring in some people every once in a while because I want you to be around them because it is a different perspective to get up in front of somebody and to perform. It's a different dynamic, right? And also it's part of you honing your skills and your powers of observation when you're either up here or you're on the other side. Remember, I keep asking you periodically, put in your journal some words and things that come through. I think over the course of the semester, you'll be doing it more fluently. It'll be easier. It'll come more naturally. It's like an exercising a muscle group, all right? You get used to doing that. Yeah?
Just to clarify, for the presentation, does there have to be a music aspect? Or
There doesn't.
Okay.
Because if you notice, like we did something with Griebel, and then it can be visual art, it can be acting, poetry, text, or whatever. As you saw, you know, with Schulhoff, we had gibberish. Yeah.
That was actually, but the, whenever you said explain the process, can you, like,
Well, for example, remember I told you last week about the person who made the wall out of food? Right? So she was then just thinking about how did she get to that point? You know, what is it that makes you suddenly think, oh, I'm going down this direction as opposed to doing something different otherwise, right? And then maybe in the part of that process, and I may be overthinking it for you, don't use this as an absolute template, but you think, all right, I started going down this road, and there are times, it's like writing a paper. Maybe you go down one way and you think, I'm not so sure I'm gonna realign it differently. Right? It takes me, but I had to go that way to get there, all right? So what was the detour? You know, if it turns out you did that, tell us about it if you want, right? And also, here's 2 things for you to consider. When you get up and you're doing it, how are you feeling while you're doing it? Do you feel what you imagined it would be like? And then afterwards, the reception that you have from this, how do you feel with that too? You know, when you're playing, that's something we didn't get into. When you're playing an instrument, for example, you're dealing, if you're really good, you're dealing in 3 dimensions of time. Think about it. You gotta play. So you're in the moment and you're hearing what you're playing and you're registering it, and you've got to tweak it perhaps, but you got to look forward. You have to know where you're going to. And then you record it in the back of your mind because afterwards you think back of what had just happened. So you're living in past, present, and future. And that's what an actor will do. You know, something in the act of performing arts, if you will. And so think about it with that lens when you go out, whatever you choose to do. And I know I'm not putting the pressure like I'm expecting great art or something. The whole point of this is expression, feeling that you have a voice. And when you do, what do you do with it, right? And when you put yourself out there on the line, you have a greater appreciation when somebody else does it, like as a profession, because the stakes are even higher, you know? If I get up and do something for you now, my career or whatever ambitions are not predicated on it. But if you were thinking about, if I perform such and such and I get a great critique, what's going to be the, will I be asked to do other things, right? So it's just all these different things that come into it, right? And so I just want you to have that experience. And I think it'll hopefully enrich how you process what's about to come your way with terrorism. Because when you start performing in a camp, wow, the stakes are different, you know. But that goes in any environment. Read Primo Levi, and who has finished Primo Levi? And it's not to indict you or put you on the right. Please try to finish it over the next few days. You need time to process it, because you'll notice later at the end of John and the Saved, he shifts us to the contemporary world. He's not stuck back in the camp. And he starts saying, no, I'm not writing about it just to chronicle something. I want to open up your mind to think about the world you live in today and how it applies. If I do my job this semester, that's what I'm doing, hopefully with you. Not for you, but with you. So that when you leave this room, you think, oh, okay, you know what? I can think for myself. I don't need somebody to tell me how to think. I can't be so easily manipulated. And we live in a world where we're bombarded with stuff. Whatever your politics are, we're constantly getting saturated, right? So it's how to process on your own terms, not somebody else's agenda. Okay? All right. Thank you for being so good with class today. Thank you, Hanni, again. I thought this was a great day for me. I loved it. So thank you all. I won't forget this.
Can you help me?
Absolutely.
Get an Uber or
Oh
something?
yeah, absolutely. You'll give me your address and I'll put it into my phone.